Just waiting for everyone to roll in on the call. We are currently missing Tim, so it's a little bit different of an introduction today, but I'm excited to welcome you all. We're going to have a great panel tonight. Very excited for you to meet our panelists. Uh, in a turn of events, our lovely volunteer Brian here is going to lead a few What Have You Seens. So, Brian, did you want to take over?
All right, everyone. As Tim always says, you should be watching something new each week. What have we seen? What have we been watching? All right, if we're shy at first, I guess I'll open. I saw Monster Squad this week, and that was an experience. I was not fully prepared. I covered it on my YouTube channel, The Morning Rewrite, with my co-host, and he summed it up very well. It was very 80s. It was very 80s, and it's having a rough time in the rough go around in the test of time. I will say that. But it was interesting. We got a good episode out of it. I will say that. Check it out. Morning Rewrite. Who wants to go next? I did enough self promotion. All right, I will call on people.
All right, I'll jump in.
Uh,
I did some flying, so I had some time to watch some movies on the plane. I watched Materialists with Dakota Johnson and Chris Evans and Pedro Pascal. I will say it was not my favorite rom-com as somebody who really loves the rom-com space, but I thought it was really interesting what they did with some of the characters. And overall, it was an entertaining watch. And then I watched Thunderbolts, which, is the sort of like off-brand Marvel. And I found that very entertaining and really fun and had some, I don't know, some really interesting villain choices about it that I really enjoyed.
Very cool. I heard the Thunderbolts was really good. It was very
I liked it.
unique. So that's awesome. Anyone else?
I have to say that like one battle after another really lives up to the hype.
I've heard great things about that, and I really want to see that one.
It's as good as they say. Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that like I was stunned when I found out the director was Paul Thomas Anderson because it doesn't feel like him. It was so like great. I found that again, sorry to promote the channel again, but I literally found out live on my channel. Like, wait a minute, this is him. It's exciting. Yeah, it's very exciting.
It's a much more splashier movie than he's done often in the past. But I thought it was just great. Yeah. So
I'm so excited to see that one.
Yeah.
All right, I think we got time for one more. Anybody?
Yeah, I'll just I haven't been out to the theater because I've been traveling too, but I've been on a David Mamet jag the last week watching a bunch of his stuff. I saw The Verdict, Spartans, Heist, and Ronin in sort of a David Mamet fest.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Thank you for sharing. Kira, back to you. Or am I throwing to Jorge? We didn't go over that part.
I'll jump
in. Fumbling now.
Yeah, all good. Thank you, Brian. Thanks everyone for sharing.
Of course.
Just a couple reminders. We are still meeting every other week with the fourth Tuesday of the month being our optional session. So after this, the next meeting, I believe, will be on the 21st. Keep an eye out for any updates. And if you have questions about that format, just let me know. And as always, Brian will be collecting questions for Q&A. Feel free to drop them in the Q&A box and we will get to them in the end. So Corey, without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our wonderful moderator, Jorge Rivera, and I'm also going to drop a link to the bios again if anyone needs a second look. But our panelists will also introduce themselves. So Jorge, so it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Kira. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for having all of us here with you. This is a program that is near and dear to my heart. I was a mentor several years in a row, a few years back, and now since having gotten a little too busy to include working with the program full time, I do return on occasion to do these kinds of panels, to help put together these kinds of panels, to help moderate these kinds of panels. So I think we're in for a really, really good conversation tonight. The subject being the fellowship, the TV writing, feature writing studio and network fellowships. We're talking about the big 6 or 7 or 8 that are out there, like NBC and Warner Brothers and Disney and NMHC and some of the other bigger ones that are out there. I was a graduate of the Fox Writers program many years ago. I was also a graduate of the NMHC program, and I'm currently actually doing the Blumhouse TV writing, feature writing fellowship currently now. So I have a lot of experience with these programs, and our STEAM panelists also have a lot of experience with those kinds of programs. So without further ado, I'm going to go down the line and just ask everyone to do a 1 minute or less introduction about themselves, who they are, what they write, and what are some of the programs that you have participated with. And I'll throw it to Jorge Thompson to get us kicked off.
Hey, I'm Jorge Thompson. Some of you already know me because of Group 7. I'm one of the comedy mentors. I'm half Puerto Rican. I have an Irish American dad from the Bronx and a Puerto Rican mom, and they met in New Mexico, not in New York. Yeah, I'm mostly a comedy writer. I started off as an actor. I went to acting school, where I joke I auditioned for West Side Story. Well, this really happened. It's not a joke, but they did not cast me because they did not think I was Puerto Rican enough to be a shark, but still was too ethnic to be a jet. Because of that, I love to write about characters who are caught between two cultures or two worlds, or even feel fish out of the water in their own culture. One of the first scripts I wrote was called Puerto Rican, which was about a character returning to Puerto Rico who grew up in the States, who's half Puerto Rican like me. I did NHMC writing fellowship where I met Jorge. I did Stars Nalip's Take the Lead writing fellowship. And I finally did the Disney fellowship. As you'll see, we were all talking before this, we've all done a lot of fellowships. It's like, I joke, it's like, and it's you, all of you too, like you're collecting rings like Thanos, like all the fellowship rings. And you have the veterans one, which is awesome. So anyway, whoever's next.
Awesome. Trisha, do you want to go next?
Go next. I'll go next. So you guys can call me TJ. I'm Trish Johnson, and much like the Jorges, I have also done a number of programs. So I first did the Warner Brothers Writers Workshop a long time ago. I won't even tell you, it was so long ago. And then I did it for comedy, and then I did the Disney program, and I did that for comedy. And then I did the Fox Writers Intensive, which I don't even know if it still exists. And that was for drama. And that, of course, is where I met Jorge Rivera, our wonderful host. And I'm a drama writer now, but I've been staffed in comedy back when I was pursuing that. I am from St. Croix in the Virgin Islands, but I was born and my family's from Trinidad, which means I'm just, I'm super diverse. Because if you ask me to pick one, I don't know what to say. I'm just American. So anyway, it's really good to be here. I'm so excited, primarily because I remember being on the other side, and I still am many times. And I'm really excited because I just know like there are Emmy winners on the other side of this Zoom. So
Thank you. Samantha, how about you?
Hi, yes, I'm Samantha. I'm really into stripes. Apparently, that's just a bad joke. I'm a comedy writer. I grew up in Texas, went to grad school for acting, thought I was going to be a sitcom star, moved to LA to pursue acting, had my soul destroyed, gave that up, decided to try writing, and I also did the Warner Brothers comedy workshop with my spec of The Office, if that gives you a hint of what year we might have been talking about. So it was a while ago, but even to this day, I really it changed my life. I had no writing background. I did that program. I got staffed on a show, and I've been working as a television writer ever since. So if that hadn't happened, I don't know what I would be doing. I'd be auditioning still for commercials. What else is there to say? I don't know. I've done a little bit of feature writing. I have a movie on Netflix, and that was so fun and something I would love to talk about at some point outside of this panel if anyone wants to. But I mostly make my living through TV. That's it.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Lynn.
Hi, I'm Lynn. I am a Syrian American TV writer, much like Jorge. Grew up feeling too Arab to fit in at school and then too American to fit at home. So I did what every kid who belongs nowhere does, and I joined drama club. And I knew from an early age that writing and performing was for me. I'm a stand-up comedian. I produce a stand-up comedy show called Hilarious Habibis, which is currently touring nationally and is focused at the Hollywood Improv in West Hollywood. And I was in the Writers Access Support Staff Training Program through the Writers Guild Foundation. Through that, I got my first writer's assistant job on a show called Waffles and Mochi, starring Michelle Obama, who I got to meet for 1 second and was the most amazing 1 second of my life. And then got a job as a writer's assistant on Actor Age, which is currently on Netflix. And then during the strike, I wrote a little pilot about a Syrian American homecoming queen, and that got me into the Sony program, which I'm currently in the second year of. And they staffed me on Universal Basic Eyes, which is a Fox animated series that airs after The Simpsons. So I'm working on that right at this moment.
Awesome. Thank you all for those wonderful introductions. So just before we dive in, just a little housekeeping. Kira, like we're definitely going to keep some time for Q&A. So everyone, please have your questions and keep them in mind. And how do we want to do that, Kira? They're going to go into the chat.
Yes, they're going to go into the Q&A box, or if someone's having issue with that tool, the chat, and then Brian will be there to collect and kind of field everyone's questions.
Cool. So we'll try to leave the last 20 minutes or so for questions. But just feel free to put them into those two channels that Kira just mentioned. So great, awesome, thank you. So let's start with the broad strokes. Like, what are these programs? Like, what are they, and what like why do they exist? What are they? So just like in the most general terms, who among you would want to tackle that question? Like how do they work, and who's behind them, and what are they about? Just like in the most general sort of like generalist terms. Trish or TJ, would you want to take that one?
So the best way, I mean, I've described it this way before. They're your advocates, right? So the program is not a guarantee. There's no guarantee that you're going to keep working, right? But the program, in a nutshell, is an advocate, the way your agent will be, the way other writers will be. They're going to vet you for the industry if you have no writing experience.
Yeah. And Jorge, do you have anything to add to that? We want to sort of describe, like, how do they work? Let's get a little granular. I'll help sort of like guide the question a little bit. Like, how do they work? Like, what exactly do they do?
Well, I agree with the vetting thing, because all of these were things we all applied to, wrote an essay, wrote, some of them required specs, some of them required original samples, sometimes 2 samples. So much of just getting into the programs can be part of the process. Like Disney, I applied 3 times before I got in. In the first year, I made it all the way to the finals. And basically, what one person told me this once, which is when you're interviewing for any of these fellowships, it's like you're doing a staffing meeting or a general meeting all at once. And they're really like the best prep for like entering the industry. And because it's basically, even the process of getting into them is skills you need for interviewing for jobs down the line. I know I'm going all over the place with what
Oh, this is great.
but but yeah, they're at their most basic, they're like a gateway into the industry when not many of these exist anymore. And and that's just me also saying, like, part of the process is sometimes applying to these many times. And as Trish kind of said, like, they're not an end all be all, they're not a golden ticket. A lot is what you make of these programs and what you learn. Um, because as you can see, it's not like we all did one program and then everything was solved for us. We applied to multiple programs, and some programs help you get into other programs.
And just to piggyback on that a little bit, like you're a mentor in this particular program. How is like, for example, Disney or Stars even, how are those two programs similar but different to the Veterans Writing Program?
Everything we're doing in here is exactly the type of work you're doing in one of these programs. You're working on samples, you're working on taking notes, you're working on giving other writers in your group notes, because both Stars and Disney are both programs that are geared towards TV staffing. And I'm in a TV. I know some of you are in drama groups, but are in feature groups, but I'm in specifically a TV comedy group. So it's a lot of the same exact work you're doing here.
Yeah. Thank you. And to that, I think I would add, like, I think one of the differences maybe is that whereas the Veterans Writing Program is really about preparing you to be a better writer and to be a professional, how to operate professionally in the world as a writer. And the studio and network programs are similar in that way, but what's different about them is that they are very, very focused on trying to get you staffed. That's their main goal. Like, if they can get everyone in their every year of cohort staff, they would love to see that happen because it looks good for them. It's a measure of success for their program. So I think that's, where they're similar is everything you described. Where they're different, I think that's one major difference, is that the studio network programs are really about, the end goal is to staff people. And I think for some of the feature writing programs, I think the end goal is to get a feature set up somewhere or sold. Let's talk about the application process. Samantha, do you remember what it was like back in the day? Like, I know it's been a minute for you, but like.
I do. Yeah, it was very specific. At that time, it was to write a spec of an existing show that was currently on the air, a half-hour script. And it was really like, I think it was my first attempt, not to be gross. It was like my first attempt at writing a script, though I had written like plays and stuff in like when I was in theater school, but it was my first attempt at writing television, and I just loved that. I loved The Office so much. I wrote the spec. I think they brought in, sort of the top contenders for an interview. So I had like an in-person interview about my background. I was extremely nervous because my background was only acting. And once I got into the comedy workshop, I'd say there was about 10 of us, and there was a wide variety of, people that hadn't really done much. There were people who had been writer's assistants on like a big show, and they really knew what was going on in a writer's room because they had actually been in one. I'd never been in one. There were people who had, worked in television, but maybe in unscripted TV or in reality. Like, we had our 10 people had a wide variety of backgrounds. And that was a little comforting to me because I felt like it was big imposter syndrome, especially because, as you were saying, this is geared towards staffing. And at the time, I don't know sorry, I can't speak to if it's like this now. Like, as soon as the program ended, it lined up with like network staffing season. So you knew like there's a chance I could like win the lottery, and when this program ends, like I'm going to be put on a show. And I'm thinking to myself, I've never been in a writer's room, and like in a few months I could be on a show. And that is what happened, which was, like I said, the most, like, one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. But it was kind of a whirlwind of like, I don't know anything. Should I be here?
And how many do you Jorge mentioned that he applied a few times before he got into the programs he got into. I know I applied a bunch of times before I got in. Were you like a one-timer or you were?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you think made your application stand out? Why do you think that that happened for you?
I don't know. I really don't know. I feel like I was really proud of my spec and I thought like I've nailed the voice of the show. And I think I was maybe a little too, I don't know, cocky about it because like it shouldn't have happened that quickly and that easily. And it's much like, my background like I said, was acting and I was used to 5 years of auditioning rejection. So to have this aspect kind of take off quickly was an unbelievable shock to me and I just think is like random luck because yeah, it's like we never know when an opportunity might come along. I don't know that I did anything special. What's crazy, I have to say this though, my husband had also applied to the same workshop at the same time with his writing partner and he and his writing partner got into the same 10 as me and Warner Brothers didn't know that we were married. I mean, they did once it started, but like they didn't know when they were interviewing us that like I was married to one of the other 10 people and that I also was like best friends with his writing partner. So that ended up being like a funny coincidence that
Wow.
fun fact.
Amazing. Lynn, what about you? What about you in the application process? Like, were you also someone like Jorge, myself, and Trish who like did a bunch of different years in a row, or were you, one timer or two timer?
To be honest, I did not apply to a ton of these programs prior because I honestly didn't have like a sample. So that's pretty embarrassing on my front. I was more focused on stand-up comedy for the beginning of my comedy career. And so it was once I got into the Writers Access Support Staff Training Program that I was like, okay, I got to really start, like if I'm going to do this, I got to do this. I can't just tell people I'm a writer. And I had some like spec scripts. I think I entered the Paramount one because it was spec scripts, but I didn't have my own pilot. That always seemed so daunting to me for so long. And also still to this day, I think it's so odd that they have staff writers writing original pilots as opposed to the spec. In many ways, I think a spec is more aligned with what you do as a staff writer because you're not like writing your own story, you are writing someone else's vision. But that I digress on that. Both are great samples to have. But once I was in the Writers Access Support Staff Training Program, and then I got into the writer's room as a writer's assistant, I think that's when I truly learned how to write. I cannot stress enough the value of being support staff. I would not give up that opportunity for anything in the world. It is such an incredible way to learn everything without the pressure of having to pitch and question yourself and wonder what you're contributing. So I think truly my experience learning from working writers is how I was able to write a pilot that was so cohesive that then got me into Sony.
And so let's drill down into the application process. Like what kinds of so you have your script, but what are the kinds of things that they ask you, and what are the like what was the process? Like we know like Jorge and TJ, you did Disney as well, I think, right? Those the Disney program is like a whole thing, and we'll get into that. But like, can you tell us a little bit about what Sony was like the interview? There's an interview, right? At least one, maybe more than one interview. There's material besides your script. Can you get a little bit specific about those things, Lynn?
Oh, that was a question for
Sorry.
me.
Sorry,
Okay.
apologize. Sorry, yes, that was for you. Sorry.
Okay. So besides the sample, there's usually like an essay. I think sometimes there's multiple essays, but usually the big essay is something so confusing, like tell us about yourself, and you're like, oh no, where do I begin with that? Something that's so important in this industry is you really need to craft your story because you're going to go into rooms where oftentimes you're meeting a big exec and you've got 20 minutes and you've got to tell them your story in about 1 to 2 minutes. So that I don't know if you're working on that in the current program, but that's something I would sit down and really focus on. And if you're a comedy writer, make sure it's funny. And if you're a drama writer, make sure it tells a good story. So I think learning to answer that question, it's not just going to help you with these essays, but it's going to help you throughout your whole career. And like it's so many things. It's like, why do you write? Like that's something to really think about, because I think we're just like, oh, we write because that's what we do and we've been doing our whole life. But really, like internally, like what inside you is like, I have to say things, and it's really important that I say it, and no one else can say it the way I can say it. I think if you can get to the heart of that, that will really drive your essay.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that I learned at some point that was very illuminating was that many, these essays are looked upon as writing samples. Like they will read them and they will immediately start to judge your writing ability based on your storytelling ability, based on what you're saying in these essays and how you're describing. Like instead of talking about yourself and saying, I am this, I think the approach that I learned to take was, let me tell you a story about why I'm like this, and then get into the story. And so I think that's a very important distinction. That it was a light bulb moment for me. I think after applying 3 or 4 times, that when I started doing that and starting to treat my whole application as a story, each part of it is a different part of my story, including my sample. I started to see different results. I started to see more positive results. TJ, can you comment a little bit about that? I'm sure that was something that you learned as well and have been told over time, after doing a bunch of applications.
Yeah. So unlike these lovely panelists, I applied to Disney for 10 years before I got it.
Wow.
10 solid years. So I changed states, before I got in. But regarding the process, regarding that essay, I think it is really important. But I think just like your writing sample, I think, yes, the program executives, they want to know your perspective, right? Especially for whatever their mission is at the time, whether it is diversity. I mean, that's just a word that gets tossed around a lot, but takes on different meanings depending on the company, right, and what their initiative is. So it would serve you to find out what they say their mission is in that year, because it changes in that year for that program, and do your best. I think to tell me something about yourself, speak to how, just like I think Jorge was saying, how it leads to your perspective on maybe their mission, on whatever they feel their mission is. I think one year, oh gosh, I can't remember what year it was. They're all jumbled together, but one year, I want to say, was it Anna Zavira Smith? Somebody, they were leading this whole thing about um, training diverse writers so they could become showrunners, right? That was their whole thing about not just getting in, but advancing. It was a really big deal. So it makes sense to show how you advance, how you're a team player, how your experience, your perspective can lend to their mission, if that makes sense. So I hope that helps.
Yeah,
But also another thing that I hope, I just want to say so I don't miss, and I hope this isn't long-winded, but I still remember my question from my Disney interview, and it was kind of laid out like, oh, how do you protect yourself in the writer's room? Let's say you pitch something and someone else takes your idea, right? They're not really, I believe, because I think another girl my year that didn't get in, I'm friends with, they asked her a question like, who are you? She started crying. She was pregnant. That's why she started crying. She was pregnant. Hormones. But I remember my answer to that question was, I had 10 million ideas. if it costs me one to find out who someone is, have it. I've got 10 million more where that came from. What they're looking for is who you are. Do you believe in yourself? Do you, like, they're going to feel about you how you feel about you. Then you should reflect that in your essay and when you communicate. People are going to feel about you the way you feel about you.
Interesting. A great answer. Jorge, what's your take on the essay and the approach that you've taken, and the importance of it, and how it's perceived in the process? How folks on the other side of the process, how much value they put into that essay.
Yeah, I'll say since it was my third time applying to Disney, and you have to write a new essay every year, I kind of had like a fuck it approach, like my final year, and I was like, I'm just gonna have fun. I've already like written 2 essays about who I am, and I just, because the prompt is pretty like broad. It's like, tell us a story from your life, and I I told a story about which happened to me when my dad died when I was 21, and my mom and I immediately, it was winter shortly after he died, and my mom was being very practical, like we should donate his winter clothes, like there's people in need, just going through the grieving process. But when we were doing that, my mom and I discovered his porn collection. Um, and so I just wrote an essay about finding my dad's porn collection after he died, which I joke later on, often what you'll hear is in these essays, they're looking for trauma porn. And I just wrote about finding the porn after the trauma. But I just had so much fun in this essay. I was a storyteller. It's, I think you have to think of it like, what if I was writing a piece for a magazine? Or, you can't think of it as homework. You can't think of it as like the college essay. Like, I've like, think of it as like, oh, the essay you write could be the springboard for the next pilot or short film or feature you want to write. So I think having that approach, and then for Disney, they also require a staffing pitch. And in the staffing pitch, because you have to do a new one every year, I was like, oh my God, I've exhausted every Disney show. But I picked What We Do in the Shadows, and I specifically leaned into, I love the character of Guillermo because he's the familiar to a vampire. I was an assistant for 9 years, mostly the showrunners. So I was like, I really related to like his plight. And then on top of that, he was Latino and queer, and I related to him in that. So I think in both the essay and the staffing pitch, you want to like be able to tell as much about yourself as possible. And I'll say with the samples, like, of course, have a great, full half hour or hour long, but really like make those first 5 to 10 pages be the most punched up, like best version of your writing as possible, because sometimes they don't read past the first 5 or 10 pages. That's my other, of course, have, a full sample, but that's my other big advice.
Awesome, thank you. So before I move on to the next thing, any other thoughts, any other thoughts that anyone wants to get out in the air about the application itself? Are there anything that we should know about the application process, the physical application, before we get into the interviews? Because the interviews can be a whole other thing, especially the Disney interview process was something that is infamous. So let's get into that. TJ, you did it how long ago?
Oh God. I did it. What class was I in? 2011.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. I was still writing comedy. I mean, and
Even back then,
stand up. I mean, a billion years before that. So,
Jorge, I'm sure it's changed a lot, but probably some things are very similar. So let's talk about that. Let's talk
and
about.
it changes every year from what I understand. So when the year I did it, we had to write a spec script. I mean, like of a show, and we had to write an original. We had to submit you know, both, and which makes sense when I think about it now. But are we talking about the interview?
Yeah, the interview process, like it for Disney, it spans over a few days, doesn't it? There's different stages.
I want to say I had four, no, I'm lying, two or three interviews back to back to back. And it was like, first it was the executives. Well, it was the executives first, a few executives from all over, kind of across their businesses, you know, like Disney Channel, ABC, you know, at the time it was just that. And the executives interview you first, and then the I think a writer interviewed me, a writer who had done the program interviewed me, and then the, you know, administrators of the program, which I think at the time it was four of them, which was the most intimidating thing. But you know, I feel like the best way to be successful, just like in any interview, in Hollywood anyway, is to know yourself, know thyself, and be confident, and don't BS anyone, because they can feel it before you say it.
And Jorge, how is the Disney process for you? And you did it how long? It was pretty recent, right? A couple of years ago.
Yeah, 2024. And what they've had you do the last few years is during your final interview, you do a 5-minute pitch of a spec episode of a show under the Disney umbrella. So that can be Hulu, FX, Disney Plus. So going back, I picked What We Do in the Shadows. And the first time I was in the finals, I did home economics. And for the life of me, I can't tell you what happened in that episode of television I pitched. I know there was an A story. I know there was a B story. I know there was a C story, but I don't think it was interesting or personal. So this time I was like, I'm just, once again, I'm going to be a storyteller. I'm going to have fun. You only have 5 minutes. So my pitch for the episode was, Guillermo, we've seen on the show start dating guys in the later season as he's come out, but we haven't seen him date a Latino dude. And I remember 2 years ago, I dated a Latino guy for the first time. And it was so cool. We had like these cultural connections. Like I was like, oh my God, this guy understands my family, who I am. We're so similar. So I thought, what if Guillermo did that? But this is What We Do in the Shadows. So what if he did that? And then that boyfriend turned out to be a chupacabra. So I just, you know, had that basic like log line for that episode. I got laughs from the people on the team and just had fun, you know, going through the story and just, you know, entertaining them, showing you're a storyteller. Because once again, the whole thing can feel like homework. It can feel like, am I being a good student? Am I picking the right show? Am I doing what they want? I think you just have to show your voice, be creative, and yeah, have fun.
And Lynn, you've also done it quite recently. What was that experience like for you at Sony?
I mean, I agree with Jorge so much that like at the heart of everything, have fun. Have fun with your essay, have fun with your sample, have fun when you go in the interview. What's more fun than this? Like just getting the interview, that's the most fun thing in the world. That you get to even be considered is so cool. And that you're in these meetings, especially if you get an in-person meeting, which is like so rare, and you get to like walk into a lot and your name's on the thing and you get to drive up and you're in your, you know, Toyota Yaris from 2009. It doesn't matter. Like you're still so happy to be there. So just, I can't stress that enough. And that exudes from you. If you're having fun in everything you're doing, then they're having fun processing all of that. And I think this goes from these interviews to staffing. Like so much of this is, are you a cool hang? Are you going to be someone that we want to see all the time forever? Because that's what this industry is. Like you see the same people again and again forever, and you're working with them forever. So it's like, be personable, be someone that people want to see. Sometimes like if this interview gets like completely off topic and you're talking about like your vacation to Southeast Asia or something, that's like honestly a good thing, because it just means you're connecting and they're liking you and you're like just vibing in this cool way. And that's it's bizarre and it's very like not corporate, and it's not, because I come from like kind of a marketing background where it was like this is not how interviews go, but that's kind of like part of the thing, that it's just because it's creative and you're expected to be creative. You're not expected to be super corporate and buttoned up and polished. You're supposed to have like you and personality in life. So that just, I mean, I would carry that through the whole industry with you.
Awesome answer. Thank you for that. Samantha, anything to add on this particular topic? Just the process of the interview process and how to navigate that, with successfully.
Yeah, I really agree with what Lynn is saying about enthusiasm. Like, I feel like I was on cloud nine just getting the call that I would have an interview, getting to go onto the Warner Brothers lot, which I think was maybe my first time. And then when we got in the program, we actually met on the lot. And to me, this was like, oh my God, it's movie magic. There's a clown on a unicycle. Like, I just was like, I feel like the only thing I remember about my interview was just, my passion for TV. And I feel like I don't remember any specific questions, but we talked a lot about like they wanted to know like what I was watching, what I like. And even now, even in a general meeting that I could have this week, that is a very high topic of conversation of like what you're watching. And weirdly, even though I work conscripted, I feel like half the time we're talking about, Love is Blind or like some trash show. Because I feel like a lot of TV executives love trash TV. So any meeting you have for anything television related, come armed with the cool show you're watching. Like I'm watching, The Lowdown on FX, and it's blowing my mind. And then I'm also watching, Love is Blind, and you're going to get some good conversations out of those comments.
Excellent, excellent. So let's move on to the next topic. So you get the call or you get the email, congratulations, you're selected. Now you're in, you show up on your first day. And what's that like? Like what's a typical day in a program like this, Samantha?
Yeah, on ours, we were trying to, there was 10 of us and we were sitting around a table like we were recreating a writer's room. At the end of our program, everybody was going to have a new script. And I think that we did different things different weeks. Some weeks we would have guests that were describing what it's like to be in a writer's room. We were doing mock pitches, kind of like Jorge was talking about, pitching like I'm going to pitch an episode of a thing, and we would pitch those to current like Warner Brothers executives, and then they would give us feedback. It was all in preparation for this dream that you might get staffed when the program ended. So it was very like, let's talk about what is going on in a writer's room and how to be in a writer's room. And then we had goal posts of what we were working on with our script from week to week. We met once a week. We would get feedback. I don't think we gave feedback to each other. I don't think that's how it worked at the time, but it's also hard for me to remember. But at the end, we had like a complete script, and that script was what was sent to current Warner Brothers showrunners that were looking to staff out of our program.
And Lynn, how about the same topic? Like what's the day to day? Like what do you wake up and you go to Sony? Do you go to the Sony lot? Do you do it over Zoom? Or do you do it in person? And what's the typical day like?
So Sony wasn't like a everyday pro. I'm actually curious about these other programs if they're like an everyday thing, but Sony was just kind of, we had a welcome ceremony, which was so cool. We got to meet all the execs very quickly, and one of the execs I met there ended up being the person who hired me for Universal Basic Guys. So, I was just there like, oh, hey, what's up? I'm Lynn. And then like, like that becomes this invaluable connection that I've now had for over a year. It We did Zoom sessions. I forget how many there were that went on for a couple of months. It was once a week, and it was often showrunners, execs, agents, and managers. Yeah, I think that was most of it. And they were just coming in talking about, what they know about the industry, any information they could relay. I would say it's always good to come prepared to these things, having studied up on the people beforehand and really knowing who they are before they come to present, and then coming prepared with questions, because especially in Sony, there's only 4 of us. So it's you need to be active and present and really show how committed you are to this program. And then we each got an executive mentor and a showrunner mentor that we just meet up with on kind of our own schedule. And then this year we did a workshop, like a writing workshop, and started kind of formulating new pilots.
Excellent. Brian, if we have any questions, feel free to just pop up and read them out to us at any point. We're about at the 15-minute mark, so
Absolutely. Happy to hop in. So someone would like to know, how do you keep the momentum going after a fellowship ends?
that's a great question. So on to that, let's piggyback. Let's make this sort of a synergistic question. Like, who here got staffed out of their program, and how do you keep that momentum going? Let's talk about that. Jorge, were you staffed at any of the programs? I think you were, right?
Yeah, I was staffed from Disney. I was staffed on Wizards Beyond Waverly Place. And I'll say that Disney works where once you're in the program, you're open to staffing immediately. And I was staffed 4 weeks in. I was the first person staffed. And I think also, like, going back to my pitch, I just pitched a show with comedy, but was also, a show with magic, fantastical elements that was also added through a sitcom. And that made me kind of like the perfect person to put up for Wizards Beyond Waverly Place. So all this homework that you do in the application goes into what they're immediately going to do if it's a program geared towards staffing. And I was very fortunate because it ended up being a 33-week writer's room, which is like unheard of these days. So it provided me with a lot of financial security. And but then I wasn't brought back for season 2, which sometimes happens when you're a fellow. For Disney, you're free for the show the first year, and season 2, they ended up making a lot of cuts to the staff and to the budget, and it ended up being a shorter season, so I wasn't brought back. But one of the smart things I did is during the first season, even though I was working on the show, I was still working on my own stuff. And you always have to sort of never lose focus of the room you're in. Like, that's number one. That's like so important that you give that your all. But I was like, working on stuff on the side and taking meetings, and just because I knew, like, as a staff writer, especially these days with budget cuts, like, it's very, being brought back is, I think, harder now than it ever was. And like, for instance, the Stars Fellowship I did reached out in the middle of when I was staff saying, hey, like, send in some pitches. We have this grant opportunity to pitch a show. And I was, exhausted being in the Wizards room, but I still, over the weekend, sent in this pitch, and I got the grant. And it finally, when that check came in to develop that show, it came like right after Wizards had ended. So you really have to, like, thank you. Yeah, you have to, like, I'd say, like, not put all your eggs in the fellowship basket, and like continue, if you're a TV writer, work on feature stuff on the side, because yeah, the fellowship it's great, but it's not gonna do everything.
Thank you for that. Trisha, you have a very interesting journey post fellowships. So how do you keep it going? How do you stay in the game? How do you keep, the momentum going after a fellowship?
A mentor of mine who I just have so much respect for, she said this to me years ago, actually, and it's probably the most valuable advice a writer's ever given. Just know what you're signing up for, right? You don't have to be paid to be a writer. That doesn't make you a writer. What makes you a writer is writing, and how you show up when you're not staffed. that dictates so much, because every script, she said, every script you write is an opportunity that you're creating for yourself to be undeniable. So that, I feel like the way to create momentum is to make sure that you don't have to chase down what's yours. You really don't. It really does find you, but you have to do the work so it can find you. And I hated hearing that. I really hated hearing that. Like, keep writing. But the truth is, when you keep writing, you just get better at it, you know? So I also, listen, I have a legal background. So be really realistic. This is a landscape that's constantly changing. Look, we've done multiple programs, and that's because there is no golden ticket. There can be, but you want to make sure that you are realistic and prepared, because part of being a writer is not being staffed, and you want to be smart. Um, you want to make sure that while you're staffed and you're making that writer money, you're saving that money for when, the still times, and you want to make sure that, I wouldn't say a backup plan, but I've been very lucky. I have a whole other life, outside of writing, that sustained me, thankfully, that's allowed me to enjoy, enjoy writing, you know? So I would say, make sure you are honest with yourself about your situation. And I mean, keep always, always, always write, or at least, because it's not like we're always writing. The months leading up to, the thought becoming the idea, right? The fleshed out idea, that can be torture, but make sure that you show up for yourself. That's what I mean. Make sure you show up for yourself.
Great advice. Thank you for that. Brian, do we have anything else teed up, or should I continue with this?
Absolutely. I got something here. So some of our friends might be a little introverted, and they were wondering how they might still be able to stand out despite being a little shy about talking about themselves. What advice would you give them in that scenario, I suppose, would be the question.
Great question. Great question. Samantha, what do you think about that?
That is a good question. And it's funny because I feel like in actual writers' rooms that I have worked with all types of people, and there are like very quiet writers, very thoughtful, quiet writers in a room that will sit there quietly, and then when they have something to say, it's incredible. And there's writers who never shut up and talk constantly and pitch jokes, but I do feel like maybe what you're asking is then how do you get into that room, right? Because the first impression, you're not going to get into that room. I think once you're in the room, it's okay maybe to be a little more quiet. I would probably tell someone to practice, and I also practice these interviews, maybe do some mock interviews. And I would also say to not be afraid to talk about that part of yourself. Like you're interviewing, you're meeting someone with the first time, and you can say to that person, I'm so passionate about this, and also I'm an introverted person, and this is like a thing I'm working on and growing, learning about. I feel like you can sort of share those feelings even with the person who's interviewing you, and they'll probably find that very endearing, because there really are, like, every type of writer is working, and I don't think you have to be the most outgoing, like, waka waka telling jokes to get in this business.
Great advice. Lynn, do you have any thoughts on that subject? Just
I am an extroverted extrovert, so might not be the best person to answer this, but I will say, someone did put in the chat to take like a theater or improv class, and that is great advice. Even me, like I feel like when I'm taking an improv class, because I still do them sometimes to freshen up my skills, I feel like all of my social interactions just get better. So yeah, that's just great. Whoever said that, good job. And otherwise, I would say do one-on-one meetings and like get a lot of coffees. This industry runs on coffees. So one-on-one might feel a lot easier than like some kind of big group setting or like getting on stage and doing stand-up. But I feel like it's good to stick with the people you connect with and you enjoy having a one-on-one coffee with, because those are the people that you probably are a creative fit for and are probably the people that you want to be with forever. Because if it really feels like pulling teeth, then those probably aren't the people who you're going to move up the ladder with and aren't going to drive your career. It's so much of this is like personality based, that it's like find people that you really genuinely connect with and stick with them, because it will just be wonderful and more comfortable for everyone.
Great advice. Great advice. Brian, what do we got?
All right. So here we got at what point might agents or managers start like breaking down your door, and when should we be prepared for that interaction and how to go about it? Will it happen at the early program, or will it be when you get staff? What does that look like?
I'm still waiting, so.
That's a very interesting question. Yeah. Jorge, do you want to like elaborate?
I think that isn't happening as much as it used to. When I had a manager for writing before getting into the Disney program, but we had heard stories like of years before of like, you get into the program and your inbox will be flooded of people wanting to meet. I think agents and managers across the industry are scared to take on new talent right now. They're trying to figure out how to work and get work for the people they have on their roster. So I think a lot of it is like, networking, like, going to events where you'll meet someone where you can, if they work somewhere, you can mention, hey, if you'd ever be interested in reading me, this is what I work on, or sending cold queries. That's how I got my first manager. And yeah, and the manager, you have to be your own manager, is how I've always considered it. Like I was able to get my first staffing meeting because I had a friend who worked at a development company, and I convinced her to like throw in my sample for staffing season, and she was like, they're not going to read you, but I ended up I knew my sample was right for that show, and I really targeted that show. And I ended up getting a staffing meeting. So I think, yeah, I think you have to think of it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. 2016-ish or 17 was when TJ and I were in Fox, and I would say that, my email box wasn't flooded per se, but I did get a bunch of meetings, and I did get my first agent manager back then, that way. That was, almost 10 years ago. And it's very different now. Exactly what Jorge said earlier is that managers and agents are very slow to take on new clients, and you really do have to learn how to advocate for yourself. And I think what works for me is getting out there and meeting as many writers as you can, and having a wide circle of friends, and keeping your ear to the grapevine as opportunities come up, and putting yourself in the mix whenever you can, and also being helpful to other people. I think that comes with the generosity that you generate comes back to you tenfold. And so I think being your own rep entails helping other people and passing along opportunities to other people whenever you can. That's something that I find to be part of the process. TJ, did you raise your hand?
Didn't, but I 100% agree with you. I think to what Jorge's saying, like, there is more than enough, even if it doesn't look like it. There is more than enough for everyone. So speak well of people. That's how you build your community. The people next to you right now in the program you're in right now, you see Jorge and I know each other, like 100% have his back. Like if he's in, I'm in. And so the people around you are your advocates. You have to advocate for them as well. And just remember that for me, I've actually done this. I've gone into meetings and I'm like, well, this is probably not for me. I will pitch somebody else in a meeting that I take, primarily because there's enough for everyone, right? And also know the perspective that agents have, right? So just remember your agent is lucky to get you. So don't feel like you need an agent and you're lucky to have an agent. They're lucky to have you. That's what I want you to know, but also know that your agent represents higher level writers, and they are looking to make money, right? So your staff writing job is not what they're going to use their 2 shots. They get 2 shots at with an executive, right? With a showrunner. They get 2 shots. And if their shot is between a co-EP and a staff writer, trust and believe they're going after that co-EP money, right? And so just keep it in perspective, but know that it just like, we said earlier, the programs are your advocates, your peers are your advocates, writers you don't know are your advocates. And I am an extroverted introvert, actually, but I am a big, huge, Jorge will tell you this, I'm a huge cold emailer. Like I am of the mindset that, what are you gonna do? Stop paying my mortgage? What are you gonna do? Stop being friends with me? Because I am going to, I reach out to writers that I love their work, and I don't reach out to them because they're staffing. I reach out to them to connect with them. That to say, hey, I really love your show, not your staffing, because later on, that's going to come back to you if there's an opportunity, you know? So anyway, that's all I.
Great answer. Great answer. Brian, let's take one more. We're over time, but that's okay, I think.
Yeah, I think we're having a swell time. I think everyone's gonna be okay with it. Someone wants to know is that like obviously these are high level programs. Do we think that they're open to like real true newbies? Do we think we need some wins under our belts when applying to a program like this? What do we think that like experience level is under the consideration in when applying to one of these programs?
Interesting question. Samantha, what do you think?
I mean, I don't know. Here's my feeling is that the script is everything. My feeling is like if your script is incredible, that the experience level doesn't matter because they're going to be so excited about who you are and what you wrote and what you have to say that they're going to be like, we can teach all the other stuff. And so that is your voice and the way that you write is not something that someone else can teach you. And so if that sparks off the page right away, I feel like that is enough for you to make it into the program. At least that's how I would pick.
Lynn, what are your thoughts?
I think the script matters so much, but I do also think from my personal experience that getting a script to industry level can often require working in an industry setting because that's how you really get to see what writing, TV writing really looks like and feels like and how it's constructed. I also think there's definitely a certain amount of, well, she did well in this program, so likely she'll do well in ours. There is a lot of fear, as we've mentioned before, on new talent and new people and new faces, because they are investing quite a bit in you in these programs. So they do like to see that you've, existed in some kind of space. So I know like certain things give you an advantage, like living in Los Angeles. I think a lot of them, kind of prioritize that because then they're not worried about you like relocating. And I know like if you know people and they know people and there's like a connection there that can vouch for you, that also helps. I mean, I think the script is the most important thing, but all the other stuff can be like, the thing that breaks you through on top of that.
I'll say that I think doing this program is a huge win and should definitely be on your resume, in your application, and everything that you've learned week to week, like doing the mock writers rooms and the deadlines that you've met in this program. Like it shows that you've already been vetted and having this under your belt is going to look great on your applications. And another thing I'll say is, if you can have a mentor from your group, like just putting in a good word or putting in a recommendation to someone who is helping, who's the contact of the program, that goes a long way too. And it's something none of these programs advertise or ask for in the application because they'd be flooded. But I think that can really help as well.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you, everyone. Why don't we wrap it up with final thoughts? I think what I would love to do is hear from everyone the one thing that they wish they had known, prior to getting into the programs that you don't that you know now that you wish you knew back then when you started doing the program. Jorge, let's start with you.
Oh God. What do I wish I knew?
Or if you have any other parting advice, it doesn't have to be specifically that question.
Can you come back to me?
Yeah, we'll come back to you. TJ, what's the one thing you wish you had known prior to going into the programs that you know now?
Wish that I go into most things now, knowing what the other person needs, so I know the value I bring in each situation. And I wish I had the wherewithal then to not, because people already know what they can do for you before you open your, they know what they can do for you. So it's really important before you step into a situation to know what they need, what their needs are, and what value you can bring to them and address it. So, so in the very same way, so there's an equal give and take. That's what I wish. That's what I wish I knew.
Awesome. Great answer. Lynn, how about you? What's the one thing you wish you'd known going in?
I think I wish I had written 3,000 scripts before I had gotten in. And then when I came in, I was like, oh, let me tell you about all 3,000 of them. They're all polished. They're all perfected. They're wonderful, all ready to be developed. And everyone was like, wow, they really are. Because I feel like once you get in, the first thing that starts happening, people are like, what else? What else are you working on? What else? And I'm pretty slow and meticulous and, a little scatterbrained, as I'm sure we all are to some extent. But suddenly getting attention and then being like, oh, I don't actually have that much to give you right now is a little stressful. And then you're like writing things really fast. But it is also good to learn how to write things really fast. So maybe this all worked out in my favor.
Thank you. Great answer. Thank you. Samantha.
Somewhat related to what Lynn said, I think I didn't realize that like the hustle never ends. Like I have to be, when you're a staff writer and you're like thinking about moving up the levels of a writer's room, I don't know if you have it in your mind that like once you get there, you're there, but like you're never there. And like I'm a co-EP now and I'm still like, what am I pitching next? What am I writing next? Like every time you get there, you're still not there. And you just always have to be writing something. You always have to be writing the next thing.
Excellent advice. Jorge, parting thoughts.
Parting thoughts is just like even like just going to who's in your group, like for the last few months of we've been working on scripts together, like they're your like fellow writers in these programs. They're going to be like your best advocates, and you're going to end up going up for some of the same jobs like as them, and like or same interviews. And I've a friend who like we like talked about both our interview processes. We did mock interviews for each other for something we were up for last week, and we're so supportive, and we know each other's strengths and weaknesses as writers. We know how to push each other. So it's really like the friends you make in these programs are they're gonna, like as Trish said, like if like you're not right for something, like you're gonna say, oh, but you need to meet this writer, and it's it's just about lifting each other up.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. My first job ever in this industry was a researcher on a true crime show that became turned into producing a long line of producing gigs. And that first gig was from someone that I had met in school. So it's very true. Everyone around you that you're meeting now, all the friends that you're making in these programs are going to be your advocates, are going to be your peers as you all come up together. So, you know, look out for each other, look, towards each other, help each other, uplift each other. It's you'll be surprised how many of the same faces you're going to be seeing throughout your career once you actually make your entrance into the foray. So that's it. That's it. That's all we have time for. We're a little over time, actually. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Our esteemed panelists, you guys were amazing. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight, doing this with us tonight. You all had such amazing advice to share with us. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, just wanted to echo those thanks. Thank you all so much for joining. And of course, Jorge, thank you so much for moderating and doing such a wonderful job. We're going to be opening up the breakout rooms in just a moment. But again, huge thank you to our panelists. I know we had one announcement that Brian wanted to share that was relevant to the topic, maybe before we send everyone off.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled to announce. Yusuf, can you turn your camera on, buddy? We all should see you right now. So I'm thrilled to announce on Fellowship Night that my good friend here, Yusuf, who's also an intrepid reporter on my channel, he just got accepted into the Stars Fellowship.
Well, not just me, but a couple of people here too. Caitlin, Charlie, Addison, you're here too. So like there's a few people here that got accepted to that Stars VME Fellowship. So yeah.
That's amazing.
I don't
Congratulations.
think I'm missing anybody, am I? Because I feel like a lot of us in the same circle, so and we always show up.
Well, that's
Yep.
amazing news
Congratulations to you
and
all.
very fitting. Huge congrats to everyone here. And I hope that you all shout them out in the chat. But without further ado, I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. Again, to our panelists, thank you all so much. And I hope you all have a wonderful night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. All right, rooms are open now.